All right, we're going to go over the code now. So I'm going to go back up to the top here. And again, as we're going through this, if something doesn't make sense, I'll try to explain it as many times as we need to. All right, again, you need to add that UI table view delegate. All right, which again says that the view controller is in charge of the table. Okay? Then we came in, this should be pretty simple to you now, that we need to use the value of the slider as a variable. We need to use whatever is current in the table as a value, so we added those. We want the program to be set up so whenever we move the slider, we reload the data that's in the table. That's how you actually have the table basically regenerate itself. You do the name of the table dot reload data. Does all that make sense so far? All right. This, starting from the top, it says, okay, notice these are both func table view. What that means is these are overloaded functions. They both have the same name. All right. But if you notice, they have different things in here, and they return a different thing. This literally says in each section of your table, how many rows is it going to, basically is it going to have? All right. So we've got it set up so that our table has 10 rows in it. I hard-coded that in. Again, like I told you, if you'd have made it 20, it would have done a 20s table. 5, it would have done a 5s table, etc. All right. One thing I didn't mention to you, and maybe you did this, I just was looking at mine and I didn't. But if you look up on the screen here, one thing I could have done is, highlighted this, highlighted that slider, come over to here, and set the current thing over here, for example, instead of setting it to 1, I could have set it to 5 to move it to the middle. Or I guess it would be 10, wouldn't it? So we could have set it to 10. We didn't have to do that. It's always starting right at the beginning now. Maybe you'd rather have that, so you can leave it there. That's either way, it's not a problem. But again, that's saying that basically our table is going to contain 10 rows. Name of the function, parameter 1, which is our table view. All right, we didn't change the name of it, really, so it's a type UI table view. And how many rows will it have in its section? That's an integer, and it has to return an integer. All right. Then what we're saying here, this cell for row at index path, that's the current table element. That makes sense? It's like if you were dealing with an array, it's like the current array element. It's that kind of an idea. All right? So what we're saying basically is for the cell for row at index path, so for the current cell, this is what we want to do. And again, this is kind of butchered the way I did it in here, because originally when I had it, it just came up instead of saying 1 times 1 equal 1, 1 times 2 equal 2, all the way down to 20, or 1 all the way down to 1 times 20 equal 20. When I first did it, it just said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way down to 20. So I added all this stuff. Okay? So this result is just basically what's going to hold everything. The calculation is this. That's the physical calculation. That's going to give us this number. Does all that make sense? All right. You may or may not have noticed that one thing I did in here was a couple places, but at least at one, let's see. We started it at 1. Why did I start it at 1? Because we didn't really need a zeros table, did we? Because then it would have just said, we would have always had 0 times 1 is etc. That would have been, they would have been all zeros for the first row. So I made it 1 and 20. All right. If we wanted to, what we could have done, and I thought of doing this and giving you it as an assignment, but I didn't know if you'd want to do this or not. But what I thought of doing was going back to this, and with the slider, having you set that basically to 0 and 1. And if you did that, then instead of where we did our multiplication over here, we'd have to take this thing and multiply it by 20. That makes sense? All right. But then you'd have to also change this, because you wouldn't want that to be 0. And I was going to say get rid of the zeros. You'd have actually had it run then from 0.05 to 1, and then it would have worked the same way. Right? So what we have in here then, taking it from the top in this function, that's our result. This will be our calculation. You can see that's a string. You can see that's going to be an int. All right. This right here, let's cell equal. Cell is a local variable, and we made it a constant. If you make it a variable, what you're going to get is you're going to get a message on your screen from the system saying that's basically an unchanging value. You should really make it a constant. All right. That's one of the things that's changed. Another thing that's changed, John, I don't know if you noticed this since last year, but I accidentally typed in this. That was the old way of typing in print like we do now. And if you type in println now, it still takes it, but it gives you an error and it says that's outdated, you should use print. And it gives you the option to change it if you want to. All right? And that's actually just print lines, but the way you really pronounce it. This was kind of a pain to type in. All right? You could have, again, gone and looked in that same thing we were at before for it, but you would have had to have looked a little bit. And this is saying in English, all right, for the UI table view, for each cell, I want to use the default style. All right? And the identifier is going to be cell. Remember that? With a capital C? That's what we put in up here before. It's kind of standard to call it cell, but you don't have to. All right? Then we wanted to get our current slider value, and I made it an int because I wanted to make sure when I did this the first time, I didn't have this in int. You all with me here? I didn't have that in int. I had it just like this, slider value dot value. But remember that even though I changed that to 1 and 20, what happened was, like when I got to 8, it was fine. When it got to 9, instead of giving me a 9, it said like 8.999996435. Because it wanted to treat it as though it was a double. So I forced it to be an integer right here. So again, that's just the current value of the slider. So that's what we're going to use for our multiplication. So that number is this one right here that I'm making the big rectangle around. Does that make sense? Okay. Then what I wanted to do was I wanted to take that number I had, and I wanted where it says right here, result equals string int, that's kind of ugly, but I wanted to make sure, in fact, I could have put times table in there now that I look at it because I wrote the same thing twice, all right? But I wanted to convert it over to a string because I wanted to print it on here. Remember, the way this language works, I couldn't take an int and assign it to a string. It wouldn't work, so I cast it, all right? So this right there, line, I can't even read what line that is. 30, 30, 31, 32, 33. Line 33. When we get up to that point, then now what we've typed, what we've got on our table at that point in line 33 is the 1. And then this next line is times, and we want our current index row. Why do you think I put +1 right here? Why did I put +1? What do you think it starts with? 0. It's 0 based. So now, after we do line 34, now we have 1 times 1. All right? Now I'm telling it to do the calculation. So actually do the 1 times 1, and then take that result and add it to here. All right? Along with an equal sign. So after we go through lines 35 and 36, we now have this. And this is just saying put it out over there. All right? If you are still confused about the question marks and the exclamation points, all right? Sometimes the system is going to say to you, it's going to try to put in an exclamation point for you, or it's going to try to put in a question mark for you. All right? What you're doing is you're forcing it to be wrapped or unwrapped. So you're letting the system know here it's not impossible that that could be blank. It should never be blank, but it would be possible for it to be blank. That's why the question mark is there. And I didn't put it there. I typed it in cell.textlabel.text equal result, and the system came back and said, you're either going to want to put a question mark there or an exclamation point up above. So I just chose the question mark right there. This stuff hasn't changed. All right. Questions on that? This is enough to throw at you for one period, but just so you know, in the next class, again, 3 things we're going to do. First thing we're going to do as a class, right away, very, very simple. We're going to create a table view like this, but we're going to literally, boom, 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 we'll do it in about 10 minutes. But what we'll do is we'll create an array, and we'll put some values in it. And then we'll change this to return the name of the array.count. All right, and there won't be any calculations. So I'll just put a list of names in there or something like that. We should be able to do that in literally about 10 minutes. All right, then when we get done with that, you can type it in or you can just watch me do it, but I want to show you, without using an actual database, how you can have data persist. All right, and it's called using NS user defaults. All right, so we'll talk about that for about 10 minutes. Then the rest of the period, we'll see if we can finish, literally complete that to-do list. But again, you've already got this stuff. You've already got the example I'm going to do on Tuesday with the NS user defaults. That's the one out of these 4 I didn't go over yet. I will do one more table view example, all right, and I'll put it out there. Plus, I'll have the completed to-do list. We'll do all that on Tuesday. I never know. Sometimes I think we'll get this done in an hour and it takes 2 hours. Sometimes I think this is going to take 2 hours and we get it done in 15 minutes. So I never know. All right? That's all that I had. Dave, have you told them that, I know you mentioned, I heard you mention it the other day to Andrew, but that that there are chargers in there?
Yeah.
And does everybody know that there are chargers in there? So if you look up in the upper corner here, for instance, mine says it's at 99% because it's been fully charged. But if yours is under 50, then what you ought to do is you ought to open it up and plug it into one of the chargers that's in the wall there. Either that or the next time you come in here, you should plug it in and just physically get a plug and plug it in here. It's hard to have a lot of sympathy when somebody says, well, I have no power in mine. Well, you've got cords right there and you've got a power supply. There's not much.
3 chargers right there set up. All you gotta do is plug it in.
But I'm finished, so if you want to take off, your call. I guarantee you by 5, I will be out.
No, I haven't drank in about a week.